Okay, so good evening, folks, and welcome to tonight's webinar. Tonight's webinar is the second of our series, Preparation for Calving, brought to you by the FutureBeef program. The aim of the program is to demonstrate how to produce quality beef as efficiently as possible, while also making it more environmentally and socially sustainable. So the team is led by Martina Harrington and advisors Ashley Malloy and myself. The program is sponsored by 10 meat processors, and I'd like to express a sincere thank you for their continued support. So I suppose two key KPIs are necessary for profitable suckling, and one of those is to achieve a calf per cow per year, and the second is to calve the herd compactly every 365 days. So tonight we will hear from Michael Biggins from Headford in County Mayo. So he's going to talk us through his calving and his calf rearing process and how he gets the cows back in calf. Dr. John Donlon, a veterinary surgeon based in Teagasc in Grange, is joining us to chat about calving the suckler cow and post-care of the cow, post-calving care of the cow. And last but not least, Dr. Doreen Corridan, CEO of NCBC. Doreen will discuss the importance of getting colostrum into newborn calf as early as possible, and also talk about getting the cow back in calf. Okay. So I suppose just maybe to open it up to the panelists for discussion. So just in terms of, we'll introduce you to a short video of Michael Biggins' system at the moment.
Hello, my name is Michael Biggins. I farm in Glencorridan in South Mayo with my son Niall. We farm about 45 hectares, mostly limestone ground. We calf around 65, 70 cows depending on the year, and all spring calving. We use a Charlie stock bull. Up till this year it would be 80% stock bull, 20% AI for heifers. This year we've gone probably 60-40 because we did some synchronization with cows. Our target is to get a live calf from every cow, as I'm sure everyone's target is, and keep them alive. The strongest weaners are sold in October, and we would sell the rest of the bulls in springtime and maybe carry some of the heifers on through the following summer. Our vaccination program for our cows would be, we vaccinate for lepto, rotavic, and this year we've done with cryptium as well. When our calving starts, usually mid-February, and we would hope to have the vast majority of them calved by early April. So at this stage we would have the sheds cleaned and ready for calving, and you know, it's just a matter of hoping for a good spring, and we usually try and get the cows and calves out as early as possible. Last year we had them in and out a few times, but you know, I still think it's worth the hassle of getting them out, and it's worth it for the cows. So all we're doing is keeping our fingers crossed, and we're ready for action for this spring.
Okay, John, so maybe just a few questions. I suppose, first of all, for the calving season, what equipment should you have in place before the calving starts? And maybe just in terms of calving the cows, when should you move the cows to the calving pens? You know, do you wait until, you know, the blister has passed, or do you do it a couple of hours beforehand or a day beforehand? What are the ideal practices there?
Yeah, so I suppose in terms of the equipment that you'd want to have on hand, like the major stuff would be, you know, your calving ropes. So at least a set of calving ropes. I'd often like if farm maybe had two sets so that they could be leaving one set maybe to disinfect or in case they needed to use it again. So you'd always kind of have a clean set on the farm. A good calving jack is, you know, a useful implement, and we'll probably talk about using them safely and for yourself and the cow later on. But I think the main thing right now would be, if you have a calving jack at home, make sure that all of the bits are working. There's been when I was in practice, there would have been a good few calls there where I would have gone out and calved cows, and that was only because when the calving jack was taken out to be used, the head was missing, or there was, you know, something gone missing off of the handle or something like that. So good to check it now, make sure it's all in good kind of stead. And then I suppose to protect yourself, long sleeve gloves and some sort of a calving gown, because we got rid of brucellosis, all right, but there are still other bugs out there that we'll say you could get from calving a cow that would be not good to pick up. And then lots of lube. Lube is very useful, especially we'll say in tight calvings and things. It can kind of reduce the friction and hopefully reduce the trauma to the cow. So they'd be my big things. And then, you know, your iodine or whatever you want for the navel dip, and a good clean feeding tube or bottle for feeding the cow, and a clean bucket. Clean bucket is always useful, because I suppose if we do end up needing a cesarean or something, someplace clean, that we can have warm water for the vet when they're prepping the cow. Very important.
And John, I suppose just in terms
other,
of, sorry, Doreen.
The other thing then there as well, John, I suppose just when you're going to calve every cow, have the bucket of cold water ready, do you know what I mean, to revive the calf when he comes out. And always have a bucket there with a bit of meal in it if you're on your own, to coax the cow into the head gate. And the other thing then is always have a halter. So that, I mean, you can halter the cow before she calves, because it's fierce important to have her haltered if she pulls her head out of the head gate, or if she goes down and want to let her go. So I mean, at least she's tied to something, you know.
Yeah, definitely a halter. If they go down on you or anything like that, the halter is great, because if you've it tied loosely to the gate, you can fairly confidently open the head gate and give her the chance to get up, but she won't get away from you. So that's vital, really.
Yeah. So you still have control of the cow. Okay.
Yeah.
So just, I suppose, in terms of the size of the pins then, John, you know, or Doreen, would you care to comment maybe, you know, would it be typical, what typical sizes would you recommend for a calving pin?
Well, I suppose we'd recommend 4 by kind of 4 meters squared, so 16 meters squared for a calving pen for a cow would be our recommendation. I would say that's a good size.
Okay, and I suppose have a good headlock as well.
Yeah, most definitely have it set up so that you're not having to kind of, the gate should be set up that there isn't a kind of a corner she could get stuck in where you can't guide her around into the head gate, because I suppose certain calving pens I've gone into over the years, you can get into a situation where the cow faces into a corner, and if she doesn't like you, you're kind of at a stalemate.
And I suppose
just the other thing there then, James, is always watch the cow next door. Because often when you're inside in the calving pen and you have the gate pulled back, so I mean, to handle the cow you're calving, if the cows from the pen next door can come into your pen, so I mean, when you have the calf out there on the ground, that's the time they will come in. So just for safety, always watch what's in the pen next door as well.
Yeah, and I suppose just from a safety point of view, maybe just a reminder for going up to calving season, just always try and keep the barrier, keep the gate between you and the cow at all times as well. And just we wish everyone a safe calving, but that's very important. And that message, and they're 2 very good points, Doreen, John. So I suppose just in terms then of, you know, when the cow is calving, you know, how long should we leave it before we intervene ourselves? You know, do we leave it 2 hours, 3 hours? Is there a difference between cows and heifers?
Yeah. So I suppose there's 3 stages to calving, but we're really concerned with the first 2. So stage 1 would be that stage when she's kind of uneasy and she's maybe got the tail up, but she's not actively pushing. So if she's kind of like that, she should already be in the calving pen at that stage. We should be kind of moving the cows in when we see them bagged up and the pin bones dropping. Because if we're leaving it till stage 1 to move her in, that can actually stress her and it'll make her take longer to calve. But once she's in that first stage, you should be monitoring her every couple of hours, because once you see her actively forcing, and you know, people talk about the water bag breaking or whatever, unless you're in the yard around the cows, you'll often miss that. So actively forcing, you can give her 2 hours if everything is going right, and if she hasn't, you know, calved in the 2 hours, then you can go in and assist her. There would be caveats to the 2 hours. We'll say if you thought there was something else wrong there, then you'd go in and handle her before the 2 hours. And I suppose for heifers, you give them 3, because the reason we don't go in straight away when they're forcing is they need the birth canal needs to loosen up, and that's the time that we're giving them will actually loosen it up. So she's less likely to get injuries if we give her the kind of 2 hours to try and calve herself.
Okay. Okay. So John, just in terms then of malpresentations, what or Doreen, what common causes would you come across? What would you normally see on farms, on suckler farms particularly?
Yeah, John, before you covered that there, John, you'd go in earlier than the 2 hours if you saw a lot of fresh blood.
Yes.
Or if you saw the cotyledons of the afterbirth coming first. Or if the water bag was really stained with the meconium.
Yeah, they'd all be key. Yeah, they'd be telling you that the calf is in distress or that the cow is in distress. So you definitely go in before the 2 hours if you saw anything like that. Or we'll say, as we're talking about malpresentations, like obviously if there's a head and one leg or something coming, you'll go in before the 2 hours as well, because that probably means that there's a leg down, and she won't calve a calf if there's the leg down. So you things like that. The other time you might is just like, so I suppose with sucklers, in my experience anyway, the big thing is often that the calf is too big for the cow more than there's the wrong presentation, or that that there's a size mismatch between the two. And I suppose you need to check that. But we'll say the common kind of malpresentations, the most common ones I would have seen was a leg down or a head back or something like that. They'd be the very common ones. You will get calves coming breech as well, where it's two back legs coming to you. They'd be common ones where you'd need to go in and kind of assist her really. But the big legs coming, or if the legs are crossing, that's a sign that you probably got a big calf coming, and depending on the cow, you might need to make a decision.
Okay. And John, maybe if you could take us through, even like, I know you've done some simulators here, if you could actually take us through some of the videos on what you should look out for, if that's okay. So I'll give you control here of the video, if that's okay.
No problem at all. Okay, so I'll just play this video here. So this video here, what we're doing is, with our simulator, we're able to simulate a calf calving, and we'll say this is the hip bone here, and this is the shoulder of the calf. Now, if the calf is very big, you're not going to be able to run your hand in over the shoulder like that. So if the calf is very big, if you're struggling to fit your hand in over the shoulder, if your hand is very squeezed in there, then that's a very big calf, and like that's going to be a traumatic kind of a calving. So that's the type of calving that you'd be considering calling the vet for at the very least, and potentially the vet might decide to do a cesarean, and I suppose a well done cesarean will yield you similar outcomes, or better outcomes than a very hard calving. So I would always encourage, if you feel there's a very tight squeeze there, to ring the vet. And then if we I'll move on to the next video here, or I have did I skip one there? Yeah, so I suppose this is the next video here. We'll say if you have a leg down or something, and you need to reposition, sometimes you'll be able to reposition, a leg down or something yourself. You may not need to call the vet. The key things for me is people often don't realize you need to make space for your arms. So often you have to push the calf back in a bit to actually be able to get in. And then once you've gotten to the leg, you're working your way down the animal's kind of, if you have a head, you'll work your way down the animal's neck and down to the shoulder, and then kind of pull down along the shoulder. But the key thing really with these is you have to be gentle with them at the same time, and once you get down to the foot, you're cupping the foot and protecting it, because if you go pulling at it very hard, you could shove that through the wall of the uterus, and then you're very lucky if you have a live cow at the end of something like that. So be, if you are going to attempt to do these things, you know, gentle. But you can get 2 arms into any cow that you're calving. So that's the other thing to say, you know, you can push the calf back in a bit and you can get 2 arms in to help you kind of reposition. So don't be afraid, because if a calf is coming out there, you'll be able to get 2 arms in, you know. And I suppose that'd be the vet will obviously be able to do this a slight bit better, because they'll be able to give an epidural and things, but you know, you can still give it a go yourself.
Yeah. So John, maybe then just in terms of the ropes.
Yeah, so this video here, we're just kind of going through putting on the rope. So this is an example of where we should have the rope on. And then if I just turn off my clicker for a second, if we play this, so we've got the rope on underneath or above the fetlock, and the knot is at the bottom of the foot, so that the line of the rope, the tension coming through the rope is in line with the leg. You should never have, I'm putting this on here to say, that's why I'm wagging the finger, you don't want the rope any lower than that there. You want it kind of in line with the leg, with the knot right at the bottom, so that when the jack is pulling, it's the tension is pulling through the bone, as opposed to kind of creating a situation where you're kind of putting torsion on the bone, because that would be more likely to break it. So we'll say if you had the knot at the top of the leg rather than the bottom, you'd be more likely to do something like that.
Okay. And then just in terms of jacking the calves then, John.
And then I suppose the key thing with jacking the calf is you want steady progress when you're jacking the calf. You know, with jacking, you should always be getting some sort of a progress. I suppose you're jacking with the cow when she's forcing, that's when you're jacking. We all have more park type heads on our jack, so you will be able to apply leverage as well, but you can apply about 750 kilos of force on a calf. So if the calf isn't moving with your ratchet, and you then put the leverage on it as well, you could be putting a lot of force through that calf's legs, and potentially, you know, you could break them. But I suppose for me, the key thing with jacking is you get very excited, but I'm a man to take your time, one click at a time, make sure that, you know, maybe apply a bit more lube when you're getting towards the shoulders, so that you're reducing that friction. That's kind of the key things really with jacking the calf.
Okay. Okay, John. So I suppose just we have the calf put in the ground here now. And so I suppose, Doreen, maybe just a question, just like the calf is born in a clean, well-bedded pen. And, you know, just from a colostrum or from a navel treatment point of view, what are the best products to use? How should you apply them?
I think the big thing is we've 2 choices for navel treatments. We either have iodine-based or we've chlorhexidine. And the important thing is, if you're using either and they're working for you, keep going. If you aren't, the most important thing, do you know what I mean? If you're using iodine didn't working, switch to chlorhexidine.
Okay.
And sometimes, as you see, especially if cows are that a bit deficient in iodine, they might really lick the navel of the calf an awful lot with iodine and cut the navel short. Because the longer the navel you have, do you know what I mean, the better and the lesser chance you have of getting, do you know what I mean, an infected navel. So chlorhexidine then isn't as attractive for cows to go sucking, do you know what I mean, as the calf.
And Doreen, how many times a day then, we'll say in the first day or the first couple of days of birth, how often do you need to have it applied to them?
The whole thing is you want the navel to dry out. So if you want the navel to dry out, what you want is a really dry bed for the calf to lie down, right? And then also it depends on how thick the navel is of the calf. And if some calves, you see, they have real long navels, they dry out very quickly. Do you know what I mean? And it's like a little piece of wire. Do you know what I mean? Very shortly. More of them take that bit longer. You don't want to be hopping in and out to the suckler cows every day. But if you had a locking barrier, you could throw them a bit of meal, catch their heads. If you did it twice a day for the first day or 2, do you know what I mean? You should be okay then. But the big calves to watch, especially after calving, is your big heavy calf. Do you know what I mean? Because if you do big, difficult calving, the cow mightn't get up to lick the calf straight away. So try and dry that calf, keep that calf warm, do its navel. Do you know what I mean? And you'll also need to actually, we'll come on to the beastins, to actually tube it with beastins for that calf. And if you have a real big, heavy calf that'll lie down for 12 hours, just turn it a few times. Do you know what I mean? To get that navel dry.
And Doreen, just on the screen there, you'll see there's a couple of different ways of applying it. I suppose just in terms of the upturned nozzle over there, it was one that you mentioned, the non-return
Yeah,
bottles.
the upturned nozzle, like what the dairy guys have, do you know what I mean, for the teat spraying, it's very handy because basically you can really spray the calf's navel, you give it a right good spray, and none of it is actually going back into the container. Do you know what I mean? Because the key really what you want is non-return valve. But the non-return valve there are the cups where you can really dip, do you know what I mean, and throw it away after that calf. Do you know what I mean? That is super.
And Michael, just in terms then of your own farm at home, what are you using for navel dipping, navel treatments, and how are they working on your farm? So Michael, maybe if you mute yourself there.
Okay, am I on?
Yeah, that's perfect. Michael.
Okay, yeah. Normally we've used iodine for the last number of years. We dip it in a cup or like that as well. We find that works. Most of the times you will still get the odd one with a navel infection. Maybe as Doreen says, maybe go on second and third time. Maybe that's that's interesting to hear. No, iodine is what we generally use. And as I said, that's the first protocol as regards the calf as soon as we get them out. And next is your colostrum, then to get the colostrum in as quickly as you possibly can. Hopefully, if at all possible, we'll give them every chance to suckle the cow first, because we find that that works the best. But that's that doesn't always work out for one reason or another. But we would try and get colostrum in the first 2 to 3 hours if possible.
So Michael, you monitor the cows after calving, and to watch the calves suckle the cows, and just to make sure if the calf doesn't get up to suck, what will you do at that stage?
Well, we usually, if at all possible, to milk the mother, or else we would have store milk from a previous cow that would have plenty of colostrum, and the last port of call would be to get beastings from our colostrum from a dairy farmer. But you're missing out on your vaccinations then when you do that. So we, at this stage, would have gone to all the trouble of vaccinating for Rotavic, and this year we've gone with the cryptium as well. And so I mean we are hoping that will help significantly in the fact that we did have a problem with our cryptosporidium on and off back the years, and we've been using Halicar for 7 days. It's very, very laborsome, very cumbersome. You have to draw up a chart for so you're giving it to each calf and that. So hopefully the vaccination will cut out that. Yeah.
Okay. And Doreen, just in terms of colostrum management, then what would you say is best practice? So Michael there, he's watching the cows, he's making sure the calves drink, and then he'll milk the cow afterwards. You mentioned earlier on there about stomach tubing the calves. Why is it so important? And what do farmers need to do?
And the big thing with colostrum is we must get it into the calf clean, and we must get very good colostrum. Now, so the first thing is, how do we make sure the colostrum is very good quality? We can check it with a refractometer, right? But really look at the protein of the silage. As if your protein of the silage is below 10% and you have poor quality silage, so I mean you do need to go in with something like a half a kilo soya, so I mean for about 2 to 3 weeks before calving. Because if you have poor quality colostrum, you are in difficulty before the word goes. And the more and more time goes on, people are realizing the value of the colostrum. I mean, it really stands to calf actually for life. And previously there, now we were talking about the navels. A lot of times on farms that have problems with sore navels, it's the colostrum that's actually the problem. I mean, not the navels. So the key is very high quality colostrum. So we have to make sure the cow is well fed. So I mean, the last 2 weeks before calving, and definitely to make sure there's enough protein in the silage. The second thing then, James, is make sure the colostrum is clean. Do you know what I mean? So if cows are inside in slats and your silage is wet, do you know what I mean? You've dirty kind of mucky kind of cows, get them into straw bed so at least the dung hardens in them. Do you know what I mean? If at all you could, clip the tails because often they can be like paintbrushes. Do you know what I mean? For spreading muck around the place. So it's clean beastings and trying to get in 2 to 3 litres, do you know what I mean, in the first couple of hours. And then if you have a cow that's just in one spin, or a cow with a very big udder, do you know what I mean? Or you have very difficult calving. I mean, you really need to tube those calves. I mean, and those stomach tubes, they work exceptionally well. And it has clearly been shown that the difference between stomach tubing and suckling, it's the same in the absorption of the actual colostrum. I mean, so try and get your 2 to 3 litres in as soon as possible. And sometimes there then, if you're after the cesarean and the calf hadn't got rid of the fluid out of the stomach, sometimes the calf can complain a bit. Do you know what I mean? But once you've 2 litres into it, if he's complaining, stop. Do you know what I mean? But most calves, they weren't born by cesarean. Do you know what I mean? You can put in 3 litres very freely to them. Equally then, what I would do is if you had a very difficult calving, do you know what I mean? And the calf is going to have acidosis. Do you know what I mean? There's those Hydro-S tablets that are lots of sodium bicarbonate in them. Put 2 of those into litre water and give it to them after the beastings. Do you know what I mean? And that'll really correct your acidosis.
And I suppose, Doreen, you're talking there about the calves having a hard calving. Maybe, John, from your point of view, I might have skipped over it. If a cow has had a hard calving, what would your recommendation be for that cow?
Well, I suppose non-steroidal anti-inflammatories can be very useful for cows that have had, you know, hard calving. So I suppose they're good pain relief. I'd probably avoid flunixin is the one that I would avoid giving cows after calving. But the other ones like your Metacam and your ketoprofen, they're all good options, and they just reduce the pain and get her back eating sooner maybe than she would otherwise. She'll be more likely to kind of get up and stand for the calf to suck and things as well. So, you know, very useful. I suppose if it was very, very hard calving, you know, the vet will probably be there. They might make a decision to put the cow on other treatments like antibiotics or, you know, give extra calcium or things like that. But if it's just one that if there's, my rule would be if it's one that you have put a jack to at home, then definitely a non-steroidal injection for those is useful.
Okay. And I suppose just go back to the colostrum then, maybe to Doreen, just maybe a comment. You'll often hear people there might be buying a substitute colostrum. How useful are they, if they're useful at all? You know, have they any benefit? Have you any comment maybe to make on them?
They're not really, they're better than nothing, but what they're really doing is giving energy to the calf as opposed to immunity. And they do not contain any of the benefits of colostrum from the point of view of immunity. So I mean, so if it was late at night and you just wanted to, I mean, go off to bed and you'd no beastings or something, by giving one of those synthetic beastings, what you'd be hoping is the calf would get up and suck himself. But the key is when you have a cow with a lot of good beastings, over 22, close to 25 in the refractometer, make sure it's clean container, put it in the freezer straight away. Don't let it there for sitting for 12 to 24 hours. So at least you have it then. And then when you're thawing it, thaw it in warm water. If the water's too hot for your hand, it will denature the proteins in the colostrum. You know what I mean? So the key is clean beastings, get it in as soon as you can into the cow. And the synthetics, try and stay away from those unless you really have to. They're all in energy source, and if you have nothing else.
Okay. And I suppose that's important when you are taught to make sure that the water is not too warm. And you'd often see some people, they use the likes of a soup kettle where they can set the temperature and taught out gradually, which they seem to be a good idea as well, maybe in practice. So I suppose just in terms then maybe of, we're mentioning hygiene there all night long, and Michael, they're your calves up there on the left hand side of the screen. So that's your calf creep area. So you use sawdust for bedding the calves? Maybe.
Yeah, Jim. Yeah, no, well, we use we would use straw for after the cow calving down, and that's
Okay.
we usually put fresh straw under them. There a few years back, we started using sawdust when the straw got very expensive for when they go to the creep area, and we were very happy with it. We used it last year again, and we already have the supply got in for this year. We find it works very, very well. The bed stays very dry. If you put about 6 inches in, you could get even less. You get 2 weeks of really dry bed, and it's the calves seem to be very, very, very happy with it.
Okay, and I just see there you have stockboard on the gates, and you've draft proofed the gates, I presume, as well, because on suckler farms we have bigger and younger animals. I suppose it is important. Maybe have you any comment on that?
Well, just that particular shed is an open-sided shed, so they can be drafty. There's space board or the space sheeting at the back of the calves there, and it's just to stop a draft. We find it. The calf likes to snuggle down and doesn't have a draft, and it's not an expensive thing to put on a gate, and I think every little helps. You need to give the calf every chance, to give it an edge if at all possible. We also use vitamin and probiotic the last couple of years as well for them. Again, to give the calf every chance and an edge that you can to get them up and running and out of the shed as quickly as possible, hopefully.
Yeah. So, and then maybe just in terms of the hygiene, Doreen and John, so you mentioned earlier on about the colostrum, harvesting the colostrum, you've got to be spotlessly clean with buckets. So I presume maybe any comment on what's the type of sterlings should you use for cleaning those, and even for the person himself going in, handling those calves? Is there a protocol people should use walking around the farm, like in a piggery, going from the younger to the older animals, or what would your thoughts on that be?
Yeah, I think the first thing, if we start with the equipment, if we're tubing calves or feeding calves, the first thing is have one bag or bottle for the scoured calves and have a separate one for the very young calves. And mark them accordingly. The second thing then is after feeding calves, especially with beastins, because it's so high in fat, what you need to do is wash it with cold water first. And then fairy liquid to wash up is a fantastic detergent. Just wash, because you'll get rid of all that biofilm and so forth with your fairy liquid, and then use a disinfectant. Something like Milton you can buy there in the shop, or if you go into the stores, dairy farmers, they use quite a lot of peracetic acid. You can either buy peracetic acid, and that's absolutely super for that. The big thing then in the calving shed is have a footbath outside the door. That when you're actually, walking in, you're actually dipping your feet, before you actually go into the calf area, because that's crucial. And looking at Michael's creep area there, the big thing you want for calves is no draft whatsoever. Put the stock board there is super, and if you put conveyor belting underneath it then, so you can open and close the gate easy, makes a huge difference. Avoid the drafts, fresh air. Michael is mainly spring calving, because some autumn calving guys, depending on where their houses, they might need overhead balloon. That's pumping in fresh air. A lot of the time, because often the suckler calves will be sharing the same airspace with the cows. To try and get that fresh air in there, and getting moisture out of the house. Because moisture really cools down the house. If there's broken gutters or something, where there's moisture coming into the house, get them out, because they cool down the house.
Okay. And I suppose, Doreen, maybe just, in terms of drafts, you'll have to see there as something like a conveyor belt or anything like that underneath a gate, I presume can make a big difference on it as well. And
massive. Yeah, and even if you look at where Michael's calves there now, they're pretty well scattered throughout the house. often in drafty houses, you'll see calves lying down all along the side of one wall or down along the side of the other wall.
Okay.
If you have a fresh bed of straw in, then the like, if there's a draft inside in the shed and you can see the straw moving in the wind, you know, that's a good indicator that you've got the wind, the airspeed at the calf level is too fast. You know, like, so that's my kind of general way of knowing whether the airspeed is too fast or not.
Okay, and just maybe just in terms of, you see there's a drinking bowl down there for calves. You know, if for rumen development, what's the importance of having water, or how important is it to have it in the creep area for the calves as well?
It's very important, really. I suppose, you know, your rumen, you need water for it to function properly, because obviously they need water in there to kind of allow mixing and things, and they'll only eat the kind of concentrates and the other kind of roughage that you provide to them if they have a source of water to balance that out, really.
Okay, okay. So
And it
just,
needs to be kept clean as well. You know, I suppose there's more and more thought into that. The cleanliness of water going into calves is vital.
is vital. Okay.
And if you could get, James, in the last slide there, if you could get those little water bowls with the little bung at the bottom, that you can clean them out, as especially if the calves are getting a bit of creep. So I mean, the water bowls can get very slimy very quick.
Yeah, and just in terms of scour then treatment, John, maybe if you take us through scour treatment on farms.
Yeah, so I suppose the key thing with scour treatment is to replace the fluid that the calf has lost. And as Doreen mentioned earlier, acidosis, you know, a hard calving, you can have acidosis associated with a hard calving, but actually there's another type of acidosis that's associated with scour, where the acid builds up in the gut. And with calves, they're the calves that they're, you know, scouring and they look a little bit dopey and they don't necessarily want to drink for you. They're the ones that have acidosis. So a good electrolyte is key. Make sure that your electrolyte has sodium bicarbonate in it at the very least, or there are other kind of precursors that you can use as well. So, you know, speak to your vet, make sure it's a good electrolyte that you're using, and with calves, any calf that's scouring any bit, I would be inclined to give them a feed of electrolytes at least in the morning and in the evening. And then if they're more moderately affected, if they're starting to look depressed like we can see on the scale there, I'd be going to another feed in the middle of the day at the very least, and that's how you prevent them from getting to that stage where they're flat and they need a drip from the vet. You know, you get in early and you replace that fluid. And, you know, I suppose the non-steroidals could come in handy there as well. They will, you know, maybe make the animal a bit more comfortable and maybe get them back drinking for you. Don't take those animals off milk. You know, let them drink milk if they want to. And like, they shouldn't be getting antibiotics unless there's signs that they are have septicemia or there's a systemic infection there. If it's just a straight scour, an antibiotic might even actually knock them back, because it can often affect the microbiome of the gut.
Okay, and Michael, just for you, from your point of view, you're using Rotavic, your vaccine for rotavirus scour and also for Cryptosporidium. You know, have you found it? Is the rotavirus vaccine working on your farm?
Yeah, we'd be very happy with the rotavirus, and that's why when the Cryptium came out, we've gone down that route as well this year. You know, it's you know, I think it's well worth you know, the trouble and the effort getting it into them. And I know it takes a bit of planning, and particularly the Cryptium this year, it needs a bit more planning because they have to have 2 shots got for the initially for the first year. But no, as I say, well, the jury is out on the Cryptium because we haven't any experience of it yet. But if it does work, it's a huge workload of at a very busy time, you know, because you know, and anything that cuts the workload is well worth investing in. And
I presume prevention is better than cure is always a good saying as well.
So, and absolutely. Yeah. It's we're very happy with using vaccines.
Okay. So
Yeah, I
just
think
maybe-
I think the big thing, James, there with scour is the first thing is prevention, as you say, is better than cure, right? So the big thing there, if you had problems last year with rotavirus corona or problems with cryptosporidia last year, go in with your vaccination this year. And the other big thing is beastins #1. Do you know what I mean? That colostrum there is the best, do you know what I mean, thing you can actually do for it. And try and keep the calf warm in the first, do you know what I mean, 14 days of life. As if the calf gets cold and you get a right bad cold spell of weather there, you will get more scour, right? But the key, as John said, is let the calf with the cow, keep the calf warm. So, I mean, put a calf jack in it or something, because heat is absolutely crucial. I mean, if the calf is the cold puss, so I mean, and the eyes just starting, so I mean, to go back in the head, go in with your electrolytes. And that Hydro S, it was the old ephedrine. So I mean, it's quite high in bicarbonate. So I mean, rather than going to trouble and make up your own, so I mean, 2 dose tablets and 2 liters, going 3 times a day makes an awful difference. And if you're not winning, then, so I mean, contact the vet straight away to get an early drip into that calf.
And Doreen, maybe just moving on then. So the calf is born, he's on the ground trying to get the cow back in calf. You know, what's the best way of minimizing the condition loss in suckler cows after calving? You know, what recommendations have you got there?
I think the big thing is the condition the cow calves in is absolutely crucial. I mean, because what we want the cow is about 2.5 of calving. And if the cow's too thin calving down, it's very hard to rectify that one. I mean, so if we're into January now, I mean, and just watch the cows don't lose too much weight between here and calving, because it's thin cows calving down. Because some of those thin cows calve down, if they're less than 2, it could nearly take them 70 days to cycle. So the #1 thing with getting cows cycling is having them in reasonable body condition score at calving, right?
Just in terms of feed, then would you be recommending get them out to grass as soon as you can?
Oh, the whole thing is that don't let him lose too much weight in the last 2 weeks before calving. And if decided just pour, go in with your bit of saya, and then after calving, so I mean, really up, so I mean, the actual feeding in the cows, right? And you won't beat grass. So I mean, it's absolutely crucial. As your kilo grass is, I mean, your 1 UFL. So I mean, so and if your silage is poor, depending on the silage, you might need to feed 1, 2, or 3 kilos. So I mean, after calving before you hit grass. But once you hit grass is absolutely sufficient. But one of the biggest things we've seen with getting cows back in calf is if you go to easier calving bulls. As if you have difficult calving, so I mean, it's one of the biggest things to get cows back in calf.
Okay, so Doreen, I suppose maybe just in terms of looking at that, then I suppose if we flick onto the next slide, and I know I might jump back a small bit, but just as an example there, Ardley Rolex, you know, super calf off of him, but you can see the figures up there, 10.9 for beef heifers, 6.8 for cows. What would your recommendation be for that?
Yeah, Rolex, I mean, he's carrying the NT821 gene. I mean, double muscle gene. Most guys know they're beef cows. So I mean, and if you know your cow and know she can calf, third calf or onwards, so I mean, you will have no bother with Rolex. But there's another bull there, Rigby, that didn't carry the double muscle gene, and he's 4.5% calving. So I mean, and nearly every bit as good a calf.
So I suppose select the bulls relative to your cows, and for heifers as well. You know, don't use hard calving bulls is the message. You know, if you don't want if you want to get the cows back in calf, to get them cycling.
Absolutely,
yeah.
Absolutely. And hard calving is pure depending on the herd donor. As if you've used a bull last year and he was 6.8 and you calved him no bother, you know you're comfortable at 6.8, especially reliability higher. If you found it that bit more difficult, come back then. Do you know what I mean? To your 5, 5.5, and so forth. And the other thing with getting cows back in calf, because I mean, depending when we're breeding them, is, and if we're breeding cows at the moment inside in the shed, and in the previous slide there, we had the vasectomized bull. I mean, and if you're looking at heat detection inside in the shed, you will not beat a vasectomized bull.
And Doreen, just in terms of the vasectomized bull, how long does that have to be done before you know, before he goes with the cows, that operation?
Yeah, because what vasectomies does is it cuts the two tubes that are just above the testicles, right? So he still has a certain amount, do you know what I mean, between the tubes above the testicles, up to the storage area, do you know what I mean, down to the penis. So he could have 4 or 5 jumps in there, in him. And normally 6 weeks, but if you were, do you know what I mean, in a bit of a hurry, you could inject a few heifers to Mullane, let him with him, and then re-inject the heifers. And with the vets, the electroejaculator that they use for fertility testing bulls, do you know what I mean? They can check them after the vasectomy to see if they're okay. But the key with the vasectomy bull is put a chin ball on them. Because morning and evening, when most suckler farms are part-time, they're going over to the farm looking at the cows. Cows are only interested in food at that stage. They aren't interested in jumping at each other. But if you have your vasectomized bull in there and the chin ball on him, the cows will be painted for you.
And
I mean, so you don't have to do any heat detection. They'll be painted for you. And the next best thing to the vasectomized bull, because if you haven't one, get one, but it'll take you 6 to 8 weeks to get one, is clip the rumps and use crayons. They're way better than tail paint. I mean, those crayons for cows to actually pick them up in heat.
Okay, thanks, Doreen. And John, maybe just you mentioned earlier on, there was someone on the phone about there's a new procedure for vasectomizing bulls. Maybe you care to comment on it, or?
Yeah, there's the epididymectomy as well. So it is kind of removing the tube just at the bottom of the scrotum rather than going up to the actual the vas deferens, which is the tubes that you'd usually remove for the vasectomy. And some vets have kind of moved over to that because you can do those ones standing, where a vasectomy you'd knock them. A lot of people anyway would knock them and use kind of a heavier sedation. So it's the same net result. You get a bull that it won't put them in calf, but it'll paint them nicely for you. So you know, you kind of, if you ask the vet and they say this is the one I do, it's just as good. You know, you'll get the same results. So there's no need to worry about it anyway. But I would say with vasectomized bulls, because we've our own history at home with it, don't keep them for more than a year. Like they are
It
you
can be
know,
a danger,
risky animal. Yes.
Yeah, like with all bulls, we'll say it as well.
Yes.
Yeah. And I
Oh
suppose.
yeah, but I think the big thing is epidemiectomy is perfect. I mean, it works. Don't mean the same as vasectomy. But the one thing I'd caution is doing it at this time of the year.
Yeah.
Because you're making the cut at the very bottom of the scrotum. And if you look at any bulls that's inside in slats, that means the very bottom of the scrotum gets that bit dirtier.
He'll have to be in on a straw bed or something like that if he gets an epididymectomy. That is a fair point there. They would be at a higher risk of infection, but I'd say it'll just depend on what the vet is comfortable doing for you more so than anything else.
Yeah. And John, why did you say with the vasectomy get rid of him after a year?
Well, my personal experience anyway is that any second season vasectomy bull gets very, very aggressive.
But isn't he the same as an entire bull?
Well, I don't know what it is about them, but certainly we've had farm accidents at home with second season vasectomized bulls. So
what breed are they? Are they Holstein or Jersey?
Well, they would have been Friesians, yeah.
Yeah, I suppose the message there is, I suppose, beware of all bulls, and you know, all bulls can be dangerous. And because
Friesian bulls and Jersey bulls are good vasectomy bulls, but they need a lot more work than the half-breds. Right, because I mean, what I find in a lot of suckler farms, especially with a vasectomized bull to work inside in a shed or with a large group of cows, they're really much better in their second or third season. But if they get aggressive, you have to get rid of them straight away.
Yeah.
Well, after their first season, it takes them a while, do you know what I mean, to get going and to work with numbers and to work inside without their falling back. Do you know what I mean? Themselves and so forth.
Yeah, well, I'd be very wary of them if you are keeping them around anyway, that would be.
Yeah.
And let's just maybe in terms of, I know, because I want to bring Michael in there as well, because I know you're synchronizing cows, Michael, but synchronization in Doreen, and Michael, maybe your experiences first with it. So you're synchronizing cows at the moment, we'll say for breeding replacements. How have you found it in the past, Michael? How has it worked out?
Well, last spring was the first year we used it, James, and we would have about 50% success rate with the first service, which was we were happy enough with it. Like cost wise, it actually took out we had a bull less to use. So no, we'd be happy with it. We used conventional semen for the repeats, but we did have a problem trying to be sourcing. We used to use 2 stock bulls and we'd AI our heifers, and we just found it was hard to get the heifers calves heavy enough to go back and to calve down again for 2 years. So we were getting kind of snookered. So that's the reason why we went down the sex semen route and so like it's we would be happy with it. Maybe we'd probably maybe go with more AI and synchronization, but maybe just with conventional semen, to hopefully get a better strike rate. But I think the way they're talking, the sex semen figures, our stats are improving all the time. So we will be going that route again in springtime.
Michael, maybe you mentioned it earlier on before there in another conversation that you get the cows out to grass as soon as possible after calving.
If the weather is possible at all, we let them out. We try and graze our silage ground if possible. And last spring was particularly difficult and frustrating at that. But I think we let the cows out, put them in and out. A big number of them, like twice. But it's still worth it. I think if the cow gets out to grass and it's one way of getting her cycling, we usually bolus them before they go out because we would have a copper deficiency here and for copper and selenium in particular, and so we bolus them before they go out, and we find it's even if you have to bring them back in, it's worth it. Like it's a pain in the ass, but I think it's well worth the effort to get them out.
You're maximising the energy into the cows at that stage.
Yes,
when they need it. Yeah. So I suppose maybe
the one thing there, James, about synchronization, I think every suckler farmer should use some of it, because with the programs that's there now, they're absolutely superb. Like Michael there got 50%, and there was some sex semen in that, but with conventional semen, you can hit 60 to 70% consistently with synchronization. And the big advantages of it for a herd owner is you can reduce down the amount of bull power, and it reduces down the amount of bulls. And also, it's very hard to have one bull that'll do maidens, have a bull that'll give you replacements. We all like a little bit of show animal, for the mat champion and so forth. To use those heavily muscled animals and those cows that'll take them. And then for the rest of your cows. So the big thing with AI and synchronization, you could synchronize a bunch of maidens and use something very easy calving on them that'll calf. Then you can pick out your nicest cows that have good milk, that calf every year, good docility around the time of calving, and put good replacement bulls on them. And then you could pick out your cows that'll throw your superb calf every year, to throw real muscly bulls on them to end up with really good weanlings. And then you have a batch then to calf together, and they won't all calf together. They'll calf over 14 days, so don't worry about that. They'll calf over a fortnight. But you can scan a batch then after 30 days. And you could put all the pregnant ones together. And the empty ones, you could either resynchronize them or let them off with a bull. And and all the repeats are coming around together again over 3 days. So for 3 days heat detection, you'll get 2 serves into every cow. So it's really worthwhile doing. And the new program there now, there's only 3 handlings. The first day you're putting in your prid and giving the GnRH. A week later, you're pulling it and giving the PG. And then 72 hours later, fixed time AI.
Okay. So look, I suppose I'm just conscious of time. I know we'll be covering more of the synchronization and the breeding webinars as well later on. But I suppose maybe just to take some of the questions from the audience as well. So I suppose look, James asked the question there. And I suppose, John, maybe this relates to you just in terms of handling a heifer. If she could have calved unassisted, can you make them lazy going forward as a cow?
I wouldn't. I don't think so. I'd say, like, would be very unlikely that you're saying if you calved her that with a jack, we'll say that she'd be lazy going forward. Is that
Yes.
the question?
Yeah.
Not in my experience anyway. There's multiple factors there around the calf, what bull and everything. So it wouldn't be something that would worry me.
And I suppose just in terms of another question here, just somebody just asked the question, actively forcing, is the bag still in place at that stage, or is the bag normally burst at that stage when they're actively forcing?
Like in most cases, it probably is burst, but there would be situations where maybe it hasn't, but like if she's putting abdominal contractions in there, she's into stage 2, so you're monitoring her much more closely at that stage either way. And if you're not happy with her, then you do put a hand in her and feel her.
Okay. I suppose another question there, just if you know a cow is having twins, or if they are twins, do you treat them any different? Do you intervene earlier? How would you approach it?
Well, so I suppose, would I intervene earlier? You can put a hand into her and have a feel and make sure they're not tangled up in each other. That'd be your main issue with twins, is that you're getting a leg from one calf and a head from another calf, and then neither of them will come out. In most cases, they organize themselves and they come out fine, and they're probably smaller, so they're she might even spit them out herself. So I think it's fair enough if you're a little bit worried to put a hand in and make sure everything's coming right, but I wouldn't be going intervening earlier because it's twins, unless there was an issue.
Doreen, one for you there. Just a question: should I cut the navel? You might have answered that already, but
absolutely not, because
Yeah.
the longer the navel, the less infection you actually have. The only way I cut the navel is if it was less than 3 inches off the ground. So let the navel there. The longer it is, the better. Keep spraying it when it gets dry. If you have a lazy calf, keep turning him and so forth.
There's a question there just for somebody, maybe, I suppose, starting off looking at pins, or how do they predict whether a cow is calving? Maybe if one of you could explain, when you hear the term, the pins are dropping in the cow.
Well, I suppose you're looking at your 2 pin bones there, and you're looking at the ligaments, so that those ligaments should be sinking, because what's happening is all of the ligaments around her hind end is kind of loosening up, basically, is what's happening. So tis kind of hard to explain unless you have a cow in front of you to show it. But I mean, the other thing is, if she's, the other thing to watch is, are they bagging up? Are they really well bagged up and tight?
Or maybe compare them with a cow that isn't calving as well. Possibly.
Yeah. You'll see the difference. Like, you'll see the difference, especially like you say, if you compare them, you definitely see the difference.
Okay.
And one thing that helps there a lot, John, is if there's someone who's starting off and they have 4 or 5 cows near calving, throw them a bit of concentrates and go behind them.
Yeah.
And feel it each side of the tail, and they'll know that when the pins are dropping, they'll know it's getting kind of soft and liquid fluid actually coming into it. And as John says, watch the other. But the other thing, when the cow is getting really close to calving, she really starts taking notice if there's calves in the pen next door with a cow. If they're really starting taking notes there, she'll calve that night.
Yeah, definitely.
I suppose there's one question here, just in terms of teeth spray or navel treatments, Doreen, and I suppose just 10% item we're recommending. The question is, would more than 10% be better? So
no, it's the 10% is absolutely better. It's perfect. It's the alcohol in it. It's the stringent that really dries it. You're a lot better off to plight more often, because you don't want to burn the navel. What you basically want to do is to dry it.
Yeah.
Okay. And I suppose just in terms of the milk refractometer for testing the colostrum, where can they be purchased? So anyone care to comment on that?
I'd say most of the agricultural supply shops now would have them. Definitely the lads online, but I mean, the Brix refractometers are used in like home brewing and things, so you'd nearly be able to go onto Amazon and type it in, and one would pop up there. Like if you don't find one in a shop around you, then you know there's definitely places you can get them online.
Okay, so another question here, just in terms of, you were talking about getting colostrum into the cows. One person wants to know your comment on maybe a mobile milker to milk all the cows, try and get the colostrum into them. What are your thoughts? Maybe it's more difficult with sucklers.
That would be my I was I mean down in Moore Park. I was on a trial last year, and that's what we would have done with all of the dairy cows. You know, they would have gone into a headlocking gate, and they would have gotten a mobile milker put on them, and then we would have fed it to the calves. But it'd be maybe a bit more of a challenge with a suckler cow that isn't used to that. It'd really depend on the temperament of the cow, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the big thing is to give the cow and the calf the facilities so the calf will get up and suck, right? Yeah. So to avoid real difficult calvings, do you know what I mean? Because if you have difficult calvings, you have to give the calf beastings, because the calf will just lie down and he won't get up. Do you know what I mean? The other big thing then is put the cow and calf in their own in the pen if you could. Do you know what I mean? For a couple of hours, so the calf won't get mismothered. Especially with first calvers, you might even have to leave them there for a day or so forth, right? Milking a suckler cow, I mean, the easiest way to do it, if you have to do it, is put her into a crush, put a halter on her, and get that hoof neck, and just lift the hind leg closest to you, just off the ground. So I mean, make sure your hands are clean, the container is clean for the calf. It's no easy task. You only do it if you have to do it. But try and set up the conditions that the calf will suck the cow. So I mean itself.
And Michael, there's one for you there. Just in terms of sawdust, where do you get it, and is it expensive?
Well, I get it off a local joinery here. You get about a good sized truckload for the price of a couple of big round beds of straw. But you need to get it. You need to get it in. You need to have it in at this stage, because there's a bigger demand for it at this time of the year. So go for it in time.
And you'd have that in a shed, would you? You'd have to have
it
dry.
It would be powder dry. It's very dry, and it's fine. But look, if you can get it, your hands in it, we find it very good. It's it's much cheaper than straw, and it actually, I think, works much better for a group of calves together than straw, because and as well as that, there's no problem getting rid of it. It's different to wood chip. You can put it out with your farmyard manure, and it's just once it's not going on the silage ground, there's no problem with it, I find.
And Michael, just maybe there's a question there while you're there. We'll keep going on it. Do you split the cows for vaccinations for the rota and the cryptosporidium? The question is, for cows calving over 4 months, maybe you're probably more compact calving than that.
Well, we would have we would have the first the ones that are calving February, March done at this stage. The ones for April, we haven't vaccinated them with the second shot yet of cryptium, and so we do split them. Yes,
you do.
We watch very carefully as regards the 12 week. That isn't past the 12 weeks for the vaccination to cover them.
Okay, so you know the dates of the cows calving, so you'll use those for vaccine.
Yes.
Ken has a question, Doreen. Maybe you mentioned about freezing fresh beastings immediately or as soon as possible. Does it lose its value if it's left unfrozen? I suppose the question is, how do you store it before it's frozen? Do you put it in the fridge, or do you what's the best way to store colostrum before it's frozen? Or if it's not being used straight away.
Yeah, the big thing with beastings is it's extremely high in energy and it's extremely high in protein, and bacteria love it. They'll just multiply extremely fast in beastings. So the big thing with beastings, clean container. As soon as you get it, put it in the fridge. Don't wait till that evening to put in the fridge. It'll last in the fridge for 24 to 36 hours. So it depends on how quick your cows are calving, right? Put it in the freezer straight away if you need it. If you won't be using the next 24 to 36 hours. The big thing with putting it in the freezer, do it straight away. Don't let it hanging around the yard. Don't put it in the fridge first, straight into the freezer. And there are lovely colostrum bags now that you can freeze it in. They're kind of flat bags. I mean, and it thaws much quicker in those. But the key is do not denature it when freezing it. So make sure if you can't put your hand into the water, it's too hot.
Okay. So
And never use a microwave. There's never use a microwave. Microwave will definitely denature it.
Yeah, you get real hot spots in the microwave.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we've answered John's question through the, if a cow with twins, what treatment would she get extra after calving if she's not going to get out to grass until mid-March? So I presume, Doreen, you've probably answered that already with good quality silage and concentrated indoors. Is synchronizing heifers a good way to get them in calf? And what percentage conception rates would you likely get? So maybe Doreen, that's from Fenton.
Yeah, synchronizing heifers works exceptionally well.
Yeah.
Right. The big thing is make sure they've reached puberty, because if they haven't reached puberty, that's the only way you'll get cut. Right. Heifers, you'll consistently get 70 to 80% in heifers if you're synchronizing them. Right. And the best method is, day 0, put in your Predator Cedar and give your GnRH. Day 5, a shot of PG. Day 6, a shot of PG and pull the Cedar. And then fixed time AI 72 hours later. It's 4 handlings. It works exceptionally well in maiden heifers. And it really allows you, as the big thing with the maiden heifer is of an easy calving the first time. So she can walk away the second time.
Okay, and maybe just 2 last questions then. So maybe one of them, how soon after calving would you look at synchronizing cows? Would you make sure they're calved? Is there a minimum time frame after calving? And the second one then is cows when they're young. Is silage okay for them, or what other kind of forage should they be getting in the creep area?
I'd probably prefer straw for the calves in the creep area. Probably prefer a straw and a calf crunch, a nice palatable crunch. They'd be the things that I go for. The silage they might not pick at it for you,
Okay.
And the big thing with the calf crunch for the very young calves, keep throwing a fresh bit every day.
Yeah.
And brush out, what's left over and throw it to the cows.
Yeah.
And it works very well. Cows calf 35 days, James, for synchronization.
Okay.
Right? If you have a difficult calving, or extremely thin cows, you could wait till 35, 40. Right? But 30 days should be no bother for all normality.
Okay. Thanks, Doreen. So I suppose, Martina, I don't know if you have any other questions, if I've missed any down along there.
James, no, I think you have a lot of them there. There's only one came in there on the how would you know if you have a navel infection in your calves, and the second one then is should you feed a mineral if cows are not heading to grass.
The navel infection is the easiest thing is to feel it. If it's hot, if the calf gives you a puck when you hold it, that there are 2 good signs that it's sore and that it's that there's infection there. There's discharge, that's fairly obvious. I find that navel should be getting smaller and smaller over time. If they're fairly thick there in your hand after 2 weeks, that'd be a sign that there's some amount of infection in there. And I suppose a big navel doesn't necessarily always mean an infection. Sometimes they can have a hernia or something like that as well.
And typically, how fast would you get that?
An infection?
Yeah.
Look, your navel infections, you could get them. It really depends how bad the infection is. You could start getting them from a couple of days of age. But I think the things that we miss more often is the more chronic ones that take 2-3 weeks before they start to blow up into abscesses, so it can be quite a wide range. But if you look at the regional lab reports, the navels are generally diagnosed in the first kind of month of life. Once they're older than a month, they're much more rare.
And then John, sorry, and on the navels, for someone not used to navels, the easiest thing to do is get 5 or 6 calves behind the gate. Do you know what I mean? And feel the 5 or 6 of them, and the one with the bad navel, he'll jump out straight at you then.
Yeah.
I mean, and then once you get a bit of experience from looking at them, you will pick up the bad navel.
You will, yeah.
And the only thing you have to distinguish the bad navel from is a navel hernia. But the navel hernia is very squishy, and you can push it up into the stomach. But the next day your vet is out, ask him, do you know what I mean? And he'll show you exactly.
And I suppose there's one there on the surely that a calf should be able to get up and suck 2 to 3 liters of colostrum by himself. It's hard to milk a suckler cow. Is there any way of checking that calf is sucking or is able to suck? Like,
but they have a suck they should have a suck reflex if you put your fingers into their mouth. But I suppose there's like a hard, what Doreen is talking about when she talks about these calves, they're flat out on their side, you know. Those lads aren't going to get up for 6, 7, 8 hours. They're going to be well past the window when they can absorb that colostrum by the time they're standing for you. So there is those hard calving calves, or any calf that's not willing to even sit up on its haunches for you. That's a calf that needs to be intervened, and you just need to go away and feed it, like, because it won't take in the colostrum in time.
And the other way you know as well then, Martin, is the calf that hadn't sucked, he'll be fair empty the following day. I mean, you know, to look at him, he's fair empty. And the other thing then is, have they passed the meconium? Because, I mean, the first dung that's inside in the calf is kind of greeny brown. You know what I mean? And it's usually about 8 or 10 inches long. And as soon as the calf passes the beastins, when they're sucking the cow often licks their backside and gets them to pass it. And then you'll see the creamy dung coming. Well, if you see the creamy dung coming, you know the cow has sucked. And then if the calf is in its own with the cow, you'll know by looking at the teats, provided all her spins are working. Do you know what I mean? Whether he has sucked or not, because, do you know what I mean, the teats get nice and shiny. So it's a mixture of looking at the teats, looking at the fullness of the calf, and looking then at the colour of the dung.
Okay. And there's 2 last questions which are completely off topic, but we're going to ask them because the 2 boys have held. I went back to check they're still there, so they've held in religiously. There's touching on embryo transfers into recipient cows. It's becoming popular, or is it too expensive to be commonplace? And then there's another one about how you can predict your kill out. He has Angus's, wants to keep with Angus's, but wants to improve the kill out. So because he held in there, lads, we'll get those questions. But we are going to have breeding webinars in the end of March, and we will cover off all of these topics. But maybe Doreen, if you can give us a quick fire, we want to close up by 1:15.
Okay, if we take embryo transfer, the first thing is the biggest cost of it is if you get no calves. Right, so the most important thing is, how do you get your highest pregnancy rates? Maiden heifers. So I mean, so if you have a good heifer, make sure she's cycling on her 3rd and 4th cycle, and make sure she's in a steady plan of nutrition for the month before, for the month after. Make sure she's in a stable social group, so you aren't moving her around, right? And also make sure she's big enough to carry the calf, because if you're putting a Charlie and a good or a big limousine into a recipient, they have to be able to calf, because otherwise the calf, especially in Shadleys and Blues, could be a bit contracted, right? Embryos will cost you somewhere between 4 up to about 800, right? You get about 50% conception rate. They are worth it if you're interested in breeding, if you want something special. Do you know what I mean? Want a bit of crack, want to enjoy cattle. They do work well. So if you put your embryo between 4 and 800, a 50% conception rate, the calf in the grounding is costing you between 800 and 1600.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? So you just have to make sure what you're getting, do you know what I mean, and what you're paying for. But it's a good interest and people enjoy them.
Okay, and just on the kill out then, for the man with the Angus's, he's Angus's, he wants to improve his kill out. How can he predict it while staying with the Angus's?
Okay, the first thing is with Angus's is there are Angus's and Angus's there, in the sense that we have Angus's for maiden heifers, Frisian heifers in AI, there'll be 9 to 10 kilos, do you know what I mean, of carcass weight. Then their Angus is there for sucklers. Do you know what I mean? They're going up to 20, 25 kilos. And then there's some Angus's carrying the myostatin gene, right? So if he wants to improve his kilo out, I'd go for the highest carcass weight. I'd go for the highest carcass conformation, right? But if he still wanted to get that bit up then in the kilo out, he could go for the ones, you know what I mean, carrying the myostatin. And we have a couple of those in AI. And you know what I mean, they definitely give you the high kilo percentage.
Perfect. That's it. That's all the questions.
Okay, so look, I suppose maybe just to close the meeting, maybe just thank all the viewers for tuning in to us today, and also to thank all the speakers, to thank Michael and his advisor, Alan Nolan, who's been working closely with him. Also to thank Doreen and John for you being a mind of information. So I think it's been very useful at this time of the year. I'd like to thank Margaret and the PR team in Teagasc. So they've done a lot of work in setting up, the likes of the Zoom calls and the training and the practice sessions, and also getting the advertisements out there as well. I suppose everyone on the call tonight, you'll all get a link to the newsletter, to the Tech Notes, and to the FutureBeef website. So you'll get access to the updates. And I suppose just in terms of the Tech Notes, we'd like to thank John Donlon for his his input, David Kenny, and also Bernadette Early. And I suppose the 10 processors, our stakeholders, again a sincere thank you to them, for their sponsorship. And I suppose also finally, just to close it up, we'd like to wish everyone best of luck in the calving season ahead, and we hope successful and a safe calving for everyone. So thank you very, very much. Okay.